Skin prep is key to any good makeup application, but especially if you're going for a budge-proof makeup look. So I'm starting my skin prep using the Ren Clean Skin Ready Steady Glow Daily AHA Tonic. This is a liquid exfoliator. It's nice and gentle. This will get your skin super prepped, super smooth, and it'll also soften it for the rest of your skincare products to go on top. I always use a toner when I'm prepping my client's skin and my own skin for makeup application. I find that this really softens the skin and gets it nice and prepped for the serum and the moisturizer and then the foundation and all those other layers of makeup to sit on top. Now I'm focusing this on the areas of my skin that are a little more congested, so around my nose, my chin, and mainly the T-zone of my face. Now that my toner is on, I'm going in with my first hydrator, and this is the Shiseido Ultimune Power Infusing Concentrate. This is basically a nice hydrating serum. And what this is going to do is soak into my skin and be my first initial layer of hydration. And then I'll go in and seal it with a moisturizer. Now, when you're thinking in terms of budge proof, you want to keep the layers of skin prep a little bit thinner than you normally would because you don't want your makeup to sit on top and then slip off. You want to have just enough hydration and enough moisture so it absorbs into your skin so your makeup really has a good chance of sticking and staying put throughout the day. Now, locking in that serum with a little bit of the multi-peptide moisturizer from Naturium. I'm not using as much as I typically would. Believe it or not, I usually use double that amount for my full face and my neck. And that way your foundation and your powders are actually going to stick to your skin and not just sit on top and slide off. Speeding up the dry time between these applications with a fan. Last step with skincare is going to be the most important, and that is my sunscreen. I'm giving myself a generous amount, even though we want to work in smaller, thinner layers for budge-proof makeup so our makeup does not slide off our skin. I find that this sunscreen in particular lays incredibly well underneath makeup, and it does not affect the wear time of your foundation. So I'm giving myself the proper amount that I need to protect my skin, which is going to look like a lot on camera. Final step in skin prep is going to be primer. And now primer is not something that I typically grab when I'm doing a daily makeup look on either myself or my clients. But when I'm doing a budge-proof makeup that I need to last and stay put all day long, I will bust out the primer and I'll grab one that I know is going to do the job and do it really well. And so I'm grabbing the Milk Hydrogrip Primer. This is like glue for your skin. You put it on. I'm focusing on the areas I need the makeup to adhere the most, which is again going to be my T-zone. I find that this is the problem area for most people, including myself. When your makeup is starting to wear down throughout the day, the main places you're going to see it wear are going to be the T-zone. So I'm focusing that primer in the T-zone, and I'm working with my fingertips to really melt this into my skin and make sure it's nice and blended. Now onto the first of many layers to come of using a setting spray. This is the MAC Fix Plus Stay Over Setting Spray. And now what I'm using this for is to almost reactivate all those skincare ingredients and the primer before I put on my foundation. Now, when you're choosing a foundation for a budge-proof makeup look, you really want to keep in mind the formula. So you're not going to want to go for products that say glowy, luminous, things like that. You want to stick with products that are going to be more of a satin finish, a medium finish, and of course a full coverage finish, whichever one you prefer. This one is one of my favorites from Dior. This is a waterproof, sweatproof. It's the Dior Backstage Face and Body, and this really is a multi-purpose product. I use this on my clients' arms, on their chest, and it stays put all day. This is a great formula if you live in more of a humid climate or if you just have more oily skin. This sticks to your skin and stays put so incredibly well. What I also like about it is buildable. So it starts out as more of a light to medium coverage, but you can build this up to be a full coverage if you choose. Another thing I want you to take note of is how you're applying your foundation. You want to choose a brush that is more on the stippling side, a little more firm, but still has some fluff to it. This is a great brush. It's from Patrick Ta. So I'm using the more stippling end of that brush, and you'll notice I'm not going back and forth with the movement of my brush. I'm not going in circular motions. I'm not buffing it back and forth in an aggressive manner. I'm really tapping this firmly onto my skin to really lock it onto my skin. And this is going to give me the maximum amount of adherence to my skin. This is also a great technique if you're applying your foundation and you want to build up the coverage. Stippling it on and patting it into your skin firmly will really help to build up the coverage. But again, what it's ultimately going to do is help it stick and press onto your skin. Applying it in this motion is also crucial so you don't disrupt those layers of skincare and primer that are underneath. Instead, you're just pressing it on top of those layers and not disrupting them. Okay, now that foundation is firmly pressed onto my skin and I'm happy with the amount of coverage that I have, I'm moving on to concealer. And for concealer, I'm using another longwear product. This is a Dior Forever Skin Correct in 2N. Now, this does say on it that it's a 24-hour concealer. Now, of course, you would never want to wear your concealer for that long. Who needs to? But these are the kind of things that I want to point out that are important when you're choosing products for a budge-proof makeup look. You want to look for keywords like this. Doesn't have to say 24-hour, but if it says 12-hour, long wear, all day, sweatproof, waterproof, you name it. Those are the kind of products that you want to gravitate towards because they're going to be meant for long wear use. Now, once I have that concealer on, I'm going back on top with another product. This is the MAC Prep and Prime Highlighter in Bright Forecast. This is going to brighten my under eyes even more, and it's also going to help color correct them as well. This has a slight peach tone to it, so it's going to help with any dark circles under my eyes. Now, I'm using this on top of that Dior concealer because that Dior concealer is so long wearing that it's going to act like a primer and a good solid base for this more thin formula product to sit on top. Now, if you use these products in the opposite order of what I just showed you, this product could cause your concealer to slip and move around throughout the day, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid for this budge-proof makeup look. So that is why I'm layering this on top of the concealer and not the opposite way around, which is fine. You can use them either before or after your concealer application. Now I'm pressing this in using a slightly damp beauty sponge. Now I say slightly because you do not want your sponge to be soaking wet. This is just barely damp. And that's perfect when you're doing a budge-proof makeup application. The reason for that is because wet sponges or just sponges that are a little too damp will disrupt the coverage of your makeup and they will tend to break down the makeup that is underneath, which is exactly what we don't want. So just using that slightly damp to remove any creases that might have happened with the concealer application. Now that I'm done blending those into my skin, I'm going in with a generous coat of that MAC Fix Plus setting spray, and then of course drying it down so I can move on to my next step. All of these layers of setting spray are going to be incredibly crucial when you're doing a budge-proof makeup. Now, this is not going to be for an everyday makeup application. Just keep that in mind. This is specifically when you want makeup that does not move from your skin. On to powder. This is the first of many powders to come. This is the One Size Beauty translucent powder. I'm just gently buffing this under my eye using a small blending brush from BK Beauty. Now I'm going in with a small thin amount first, and this is going to be my initial set. And then my main set is going to be using one of my favorite powder puffs. This is just from Amazon. I'm going back to that one size powder. I'm working that powder into the palm of my hand, which in turn is buffing it into that powder puff. And now I'm using that powder to press firmly down under my eye. Now what this technique is going to do is completely lock down that concealer under my eye, making it budge-proof, cry-proof, sweat-proof, you name it. Now using the same technique throughout the rest of my face to lock in my makeup, especially in the areas of my face that tend to get worn down easier. So like I said earlier, the T-zone, around the mouth, anywhere that I consider high traffic areas of the face. And what I mean by high traffic is the areas of your face that move the most. So around your mouth, around your nose, and of course, like you saw earlier, under your eyes. Those are high traffic points of the face, and those are the areas of the face that tend to break down makeup quicker than the other areas. So those are going to be crucial places to press and lock in with this powder. Now with whatever's left over in my powder puff, I'm just setting the rest of my skin, going under my cheekbone, around my forehead, making sure that there's no area of the skin that is not pressed and locked in with that translucent powder. Now, once I have my full face powdered down, I'm going in with my bake. Now, this is going to be a light bake. It's not going to be an intense bake, but you can see that I have an excess amount of powder that I'm applying directly under my eye and in all the high traffic areas of my face, once again, so around my nose, around my mouth, and any of the areas of my skin that get extra oily and I want to stay put. Now, once my powder is done, we're going to go in with another round of the setting spray. This is the MAC Fix Plus Stay Over Setting Spray. I'm giving my skin an extra generous amount because we have a lot of powder on our skin and we want to make sure that setting spray really soaks in and takes away that powdery finish but also locks that powder into place. One final round of powder. Yes, I know, it's a lot of powder, but trust me, this is not for the everyday makeup application. This is when you want your makeup to be budge proof. So going in with that final round of powder and just pressing it into the T-zone of my face, doing one last spray of MAC Fix Plus, fanning it off. Again, stay with me. It's a lot of layers, but all these layers are what's going to make for a budge proof makeup. Now onto some warmth. Let's warm up the skin. I'm using a matte bronzer and I'm buffing this into my skin using a large Morphe brush. The reason why I choose a matte powder bronzer for a budge proof makeup look is because this is not going to disrupt the layers of makeup that we have on. Now, if I went in with a cream bronzer, that could possibly disrupt that makeup. And of course, creams, they're not going to last as long on your skin, especially on your cheeks. So in order to avoid anything from slipping or getting patchy, I'm not using a cream. I'm just sticking to a powder bronzer and I'm working in layers to build up the amount of intensity that I want. Now using a small eyeshadow brush, I'm using the same bronzer to lightly sculpt and shade and contour my nose, just bringing life and balance to the center of my face. Now moving on to highlighter, and for the same reasons why I used a powder bronzer, that's exactly why I'm using a powder highlighter. We don't want to disrupt that makeup that's underneath by using a cream or a liquid. And this is still going to give us a beautiful, glowy, dewy look to our skin. So it's perfect for layering on top of more powdered skin because it's going to bring that glow and bring that life back into our complexion. So just highlighting the areas that I love to highlight the most, like the top of my nose, the very tip of my nose, of course, the cheekbone. I also swept this across my forehead for some extra glow. Now onto powder blush, again, for the same reason as I spoke about before. This is going to stay put all day. It's not going to disrupt that makeup that's underneath, and it's still going to bring life to our skin and give a beautiful flushed look to our cheek. Now, I want you to take note of the application and the way I'm applying this blush onto my cheeks. I'm not buffing it back and forth. I'm not being super aggressive. What I am doing is pressing it firmly onto my skin, and this is going to just lock it in. It's going to help it stick to my skin, which could be difficult at times when you're applying a powder blush on top of powdered skin. Sometimes the appearance of it can be a little dull and a little lackluster. So by pressing it onto the skin and really stippling it on, you're really getting the max amount of color payoff without a dull finish. So firmly going back and forth, pressing it on, working in layers to build up the amount of color payoff that I'm looking for. Now you guessed it, one more spray of the MAC Fix Plus and giving myself a generous coat once again. This is just crucial when you're doing a budge proof makeup. You want to be setting each layer of makeup on your skin. And then of course removing the excess makeup on my mole. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how to get budge proof medium to full coverage foundation. Make sure you click on this video right here next to see exactly how to get budge proof eye makeup.